Let us now begin the program of the day with a very interesting fireside chat among the senior leaders of the industry and on the topic Winds of Change, Young Dynamics in Indian Realty. So let me introduce our session members. The session will be chaired by Mr. Gaurav Karnik, partner and national leader, Real Estate Ernst & Young LLP. Gaurav is the national leader for EY's real estate sector in India and is a partner with the tax practice. He has advised several real estate developers as well as real estate focused private equity funds based in the US, UK, Canada, and Singapore in structuring their India-centric real estate funds and specific investments in Indian companies. Gaurav is actively involved with the central government on policy matters related to the sector and also serves on real estate committees of various industry associations. So this is our moderator for the session. Let me now introduce our eminent speakers in an alphabetical order. I welcome Mr. Amit Grover, Executive Director, Office Businesses, DLF, a seasoned commercial real estate professional with more than 27 years of experience. He has driven the entire growth of DLF's office business across Gurgaon, Chennai, Hyderabad, Kolkata, Pune, Chandigarh, Noida, and he leads planning, strategy, marketing, leasing, building operations, safety, sustainability, and compliance leadership of DLF office businesses. Quite a lot to handle, of course. So our next speaker, let me introduce Mr. Sanjay Dutt, MD and CEO, Tata Realty and Infrastructure Limited and Tata Housing Development Company Limited, and equally expert real estate speaker, we have Mr. Dutt, who has over 30 years of experience in the real estate and has been the key architect in transforming Tata Realty into a pioneer in the real estate sector. He's responsible for directing Tata Realty's business vision and managing the business operations with strategic planning and execution. So this is our panel. Mr. Karnik, let me hand it over to you now. And in the meantime, Mr. Dutt, Gaurav Karnik has already shared a few pointers for both our speakers. Any one point that you might start the conversation on?
Thank you, Sapna. And I'm delighted to be a part of Gaurav and Amit's, session. We've always had interesting conversation. I am really looking forward to Gaurav's insights on the amendments that we're making necessary, and he's had some recent meetings with the Ministry of Commerce as well. So looking forward to that input. I know even Amit was a part there. I think I'll take the lead in setting a context of how in recent few quarters, the landscape has changed and continues to change. And I think that would be very relevant for our discussion to stimulate and give some rise to some questions and probably address some of the questions that our attendees must be looking forward to. First really is globally, we've had a situation of US recession, and more than the recession, which never took place, it was the fear of recession which actually stalled most of the economies, including US. And for some reason, and for many predictable reasons, they've had a situation of high inflation, and the interest rates were rising, and so was the case in India. And that did impact the businesses, the margins, the cost of capital, and also the fact that India has a direct correlation with US economy, whether in terms of technology and IT sector dependencies, or actually the fact that 50% of the leasing in India out of 50 million feet, these are the American corporations who lease and stop and watch on Indian real estate. So much so that it directly impacted the private equity space. Therefore, they said, we will not invest for time being. They remain bullish. They remain positive on India's story. It is the only economy which is thriving, the only economy which is growing, even in real estate, and where the back to office is substantially improved compared to what we see in US and Canada. And I think the reasons are quite obvious, even though in India it has taken about a year or so, but I can say with clarity and conviction that out of 700 million square feet, a good 350 million square feet with institutions like DLF, Tata, Capital Land, uh, you know, Prestige, RMZ, K Corp, etc. And there is a close to 60% office participation. Considering that even at the peak of the market, it used to be 85% occupied, coming back to 65% is a good news. And which means that the organizations have started communicating very clearly that productivity is disturbed. Return to office does make sense, especially when you hire new talent and you give them the opportunity to collaborate, learn, engage in the office, and the benefits of engagement, which were obvious earlier, but were lost because of COVID, and they have started to come back. And therefore, that has really helped the sector. So even in this year of wait and watch and US recession fears, India is likely to do 30 plus million square feet net absorption by calendar year Jan, December. Although it is not as strong as what it was last year, but it's still a very good sign. There is a healthy supply. And I've done some recent engagements with occupiers personally. And I know they're gearing up the hiring on a very large scale. So I'm really looking forward to India achieving its full glory on the office space, which we think next financial year you will see. Amit, if you're back, let me pick up your thoughts so that we can make this more meaningful.
Yeah, Sanjay, I think yes, you can start. So thanks for, we always admire your leadership and giving direction to the industry and putting in context in any situation. And I think, as you rightly said, that the key question which the industry is looking for a direction, that while the US, there are headwinds against, and one keeps wondering, while we always drive direction from what's happening from US. But I think India, through its resilience and the strength, has proven that what possibly US and Europe are going through, the India scenario is substantially different. And I think that has been proven on various factors on account of the strong domestic growth of the economy, the large educated middle class base, which gives us a large strength for as an employment tool in the country, the consistent focus of the government on policy, futuristic policy and infrastructure investment, the whole digitization efforts of the government across the board, and making all the government departments also work in a very digital platform way. And also the large value creation which has been come from the startup ecosystem, which has become substantially matured in terms of, and that's why I think there are over 100 plus unicorns here. And having said that, in the same journey in the last 5 to 6 years, all the Indian companies have also moved up the value chain in terms of doing more IP and research and high-end work. So it's no more just what the industry started was just voice-based and element. I think that has become a passé and we've come a long way. And I was taking some data on the number of IPs which are now getting registered in India, and that figure has been increasing substantially. And that's very motivating, because now you're hearing the companies which are coming to India are deep tech, you have research, you have biotech and others. And therefore, the whole movement as far as the workforce and the innovation is concerned, India is competing with the West Coast in the larger sense. And I think that journey, it will go to go stronger. Having said that, commercial real estate has always been a reflection of the health of the economy. So on one side, the way the globally we all got, it got impacted with COVID. But what's more important with 3 years from COVID, as you rightly said, it's not a one size fits all. While some of the cities in US are still, quite low on the return to work, On the contrary, the weighted average return to work in India is higher. I think a weighted average at a country level is now maybe 50 to 60%, whereas some of the cities and specific companies have shown over 80% return to work, so which is very promising. And all the CEOs and companies have realized that it is very important to encourage employees to return to work. Because in that phase of extended work from home, the companies had gone through the issues of higher attrition, job, the complete disconnect with the culture of the company and various other factors. And I think all the IT companies and tech companies have realized the value creation of the physical space, because to drive innovation, you have to consistently interact with your colleagues, with your bosses, customers, and build solutions which are consistently innovative. And it's not something that you can take an instruction and sit at home for a month and follow that instruction every day. It is a cycle which kind of changes. And I think that's something which is very heartening. And we met various CEOs who are now very clear that the way to work is at office. Having said that, what has COVID done, and is also that there's across acknowledgement with the corporate world on work-life integration, how to be more human, and therefore corporations have been more flexible. That and that's sort of new term which came in as hybrid. That you take the ownership of the output, and it's okay if you want to be 4 days in office or 3 days in office and 2 days or 3 days at home, and as long as you can use technology to manage the work-life balance, companies have been open about it. The way I look at it is that even as a hybrid, it is creating more value, because basically it is increasing the overall employee base in the country. You have more women workforce which has entered into the working stream, which was earlier not there, right? Likewise, you had more workforce from tier 2, which is entering into the work stream there. So I don't think it is coming at the cost of the primary cities and city centers. It is just increasing the employee base. We've in SEZs in specific, we tap the employee data. And we figured out that for most companies, while the seat count remained the same at the physical SEZs, but their employee count has moved. So to us, that itself is a good that their employee count has moved. And now that the companies are encouraging employees to come back, they will be increasing the seat count. And that's what we are hearing it now, that while the overall employees in every organization have become, like in the last 3 years, close to 1.1, even more. Now that percentage is coming back, and suddenly there is demand, almost on an immediate basis of the office workplace. So that's just at an initial context. I'll be happy to hear more from you and Gaurav, and then get deeper.
Yeah, no, let's have Gaurav back in the discussion. Gaurav, thank you for patiently waiting.
Can you hear me now, Sanjay and Amit?
Yes, we can.
Yes. Yeah. So, you brought up a good point on, people returning back to work, the hybrid system, etc. So from both your perspectives, I guess, the hot topic is the SEZ, and, the SEZ has all the limitations. You have work from home guidelines with a prescribed percentage. And, we can obviously get into the discussion that Amit was part of yesterday. But given that, we've seen different type of players. So we have the IT companies which say we want 65, 80, 75 back to work. And then you have the new GCCs who are based out of the US coming back and relocating in India. And they are not really saying that we need to get to 50% or 60%, but, they are saying that about 15 to 20, or, they want to keep it mixed and as per the employees. So there is obviously a difference in the two ratios between what are Indian IT companies and what may be the foreign ones. So how do you see that as an impact on SEZs going forward? And what do you see is the changes that are required from the SEZ Act as such, which will help you to, you already have built up all this infrastructure. How would you get the occupancy high and keep the, vacancies down?
So Gaurav, it's a very relevant question. First of all, I think most of the such called multinational organizations based out of the western part of the world are still worried about losing precious talent, and therefore their strategy is defensive. And defensive
And I think they're doing more harm to themselves by staying defensive and not following their own counterparts in a very large volume in India and elsewhere, where the return to office is nearly 50-60%, in some cases even 80%, Amit said it, and we've seen our building and parks. And it has one more impact. You see, SEZ particularly have high vacancy because of sunset clause. Their revenues have dropped, Gaurav, and you also got a gist of it yesterday. And I was taking clues from some of our colleagues. And that also worries the government that, why did we give these incentives if the revenues are dropping? And the reality is very simple. If the bureaucratic process of SEZ without any tax benefit is going to continue, again, the government has to, one, change the act, amend the act to allow domestic tariff companies to come in, which is very strategic, and which will make the same companies come back into the SEZ and therefore capture the revenue before they start making their mind differently and the government start losing the revenue, especially the GST, which they otherwise would earn. So I think that's a big factor, and therefore their behavior will impact Indian real estate as well as the government and the revenue. The obvious recommendation from a developer community and investor community would be that they should not be so protective, and they should continue to give flexibility, of course. Many of the organizations that I know, some of the top American banks particularly, started with 3 days work, and they are already now experiencing employees wanting to do 4 days and 5 days. So it's a very gradual process. So I think if this happens over the next 6 to 12 months, this small community of such corporates will also be in line with the industry trend, and therefore then it will save the SEZs and the commercial real estate market. So I'm hopeful that that would happen. I'll tell you a surprise. We did a lease of nearly 4.5 lakh square feet from a IT park to SEZ, Gaurav, interestingly in Chennai, of a large tech company. And we were wondering why. And I think it was because of the quality of the asset, the location, and they did not mind the so-called perceived very negatively the bureaucratic process. Basically, what they're asking is of quarterly results and disclosures, which once you set the momentum, it can easily be done. So I'm quite hopeful that this would be arrested, and therefore they will fall in line. And hopeful, that next year, particularly next year, you will see absorptions upwards of 40 million square feet net going forward, because I see the momentum building already.
So that's great. So I think that's very positive. I think, Amit, I would also solicit your views on the same. Obviously, we've had many discussions on this, but Amit, what would be your view on this?
Yeah. So I think the one is that, as Sanjay rightly said, my core focus is that, see, the global tech companies and IT companies are coming to India. First primary objective is to access our talent pool. If we look at the Indian contribution of India in the global tech talent pool, we are in the range of 20 to 22% of the global tech talent pool coming from India. Now imagine which segment of a supplier side we have a 20 to 22% market share as a supply share. So the core focus is that these companies are coming to India primarily to access the talent pool. Right. Everything else is secondary in terms of infrastructure, cities, etc., etc. And therefore, they want a zone which is which I would say, which does not have any compliance requirements or strategic requirements, which impacts their ability and flexibility to operate in a world which is very dynamic today. Right. Having said that, I personally feel that SEZs in the last 2-3 years have become a bit underrated. Please appreciate when the SEZ scheme started, one of the fundamental requirement was a 25-acre land area. So therefore, all SEZs developed in India are within that larger land base, 25-acre and above. We all know in real estate, when the land base is bigger, by default, the overall workplace ecosystem one is able to deliver is always better than a smaller, better looking, a building which could be in a 5-acre or 10-acre land base itself. So as a start point itself, SEZ have an edge because of the size of the land and therefore the span which they're able to deliver. As Sanjay rightly said, we've also seen experience while the world is double guessing about SEZ. We've seen some intelligent decisions where companies have said, okay, we don't mind. And actually, I have spoken to some of the CFOs who say that, okay, when you get deeper, the compliance requirements in SEZ are similar to what I have to do anyhow for my company law in terms of managing the files and submissions. So actually, it is not. It's just got too much, somewhat misunderstood. And therefore, we believe there are 2 or 3 action points which are there, which is required for SEZ. One is a more education of the ease of doing business in SEZ, because the SEZ department have also improved the portal system and other factors. So some of my colleagues from the consulting side say that it has got something a lot better. We need to create education of that. Second, we have to acknowledge that still there are many global captives companies who would want a non-SEZ and a non-compliant zone, and they're okay with no tax benefit also. So how do you get the existing SEZs offer both? And which is where the industry has represented for a floor-wise denotification way, which is no different than the erstwhile scheme of STPI, where in a same building you have certain floors where the occupant company can get it notified, and then certain company who says, I want to do domestic business or even an international business, but I don't want a tax benefit, and therefore I don't want it to be notified or custom bonded. So that flexibility is what industry has represented. We have been told by the government that that's been looked at it with a lot more detail, because they understand that SEZ currently have vacancies. They also look at the ecosystem, that the overall there is growth in a lot of other companies, startups, some of the unicorns, which today are serving Indian market, but have the ability to secure dollar revenue. They can come into SEZ, right, and can do both domestic and international business. So that flexibility will also come in the moment the floor-wise denotification is allowed. So I think one, creating more education on one side, so that some companies who are slightly lesser educated feel that it's not so bureaucratic the way it is. The other is we do this whole ecosystem of denotification of floor-wise / section-wise. What will also give an advantage on denotification is the developer's ability to denotify, let's say, the amenities area. Now, today, amenities area should be accessible in some sense for the employee base, friends and families from outside. Right? So the whole denotification approach will also give certain way for amenities denotifying. And will give the ability of friends and families to access the amenities the way it is done in any other non-SEZ world. For example, in Gurgaon, we have Cyber Park, we have a Cyber Park as a building, but the food court is accessible to friends and families outside. Likewise, we have Cyber Hub, which is accessible to friends and families. And even on weekends, it is used when the employee which is working in the companies are not used. So it kind of makes the whole ecosystem far more collaborative. That's the focus, I look at it from SEZ. And I think the government is and the department has understood, and they're working on it.
Yeah, I think the government is well versed with the issue that all of us are facing on the SEZ issue. And I think hopefully they will resolve it and make it, more viable again. The other point I was, coming to, Amit, is that given this hybrid work and people, want to be flexible, the other trend that we see is that, co-working platforms are also picking up, and there are many operators, and the difference could be the different type of infrastructure. They're not uniformity. How do you see co-working platforms compete with the large developers such as yourselves, and do you see that having an impact on tenants coming in? Because small startups or even some of the other consulting people may want to have a flexibility closer to the house of the employee. So they may not take the whole space, and they'll say that, okay, let's take these, so many desks, so many seats, etc. So what do you see the impact of, co-working platforms in view of hybrid work?
I think there are three key drivers which are driving this growth, and it's always the customer need which drives any new segment. Number one is the agility which the user group wants. So in the phase where companies are not very sure of what size and scale and how much a tenure, and may not be comfortable for a 9-year or a 10-year lease commitment, they would be okay with a 2-year or a 3-year with, I would say, more like a managed space providers. That's a better, more workable term these days. They're okay with 2-year or a 3-year lock-in, but not a 9-year or a 10-year commitment. So it gives them flexibility on the term itself. The second is the experience element, that besides the physical space and interior, some companies are looking at end-to-end service, which some of the co-working/managed space providers are able to do by enhanced service, right from the entire internal facility management to the concierge and a couple of other travel support and everything. So definitely they've raised the bar in terms of end-to-end service. The third is the fact that as you rightly said, in certain locations, and I'm not a big fan of hub and spoke, but yeah, in certain cities, and my sense is it's only Mumbai and Bangalore where the travel distance between certain locations can be long. You may have a central large office, and you may have a small hub and spoke model, which is at a certain distance for certain employees who don't want to travel 1.5 hours. They'll say, okay, I'll be in a location which is close to home. And that instead of setting up their own offices, the companies may tie up with the co-working/managed service providers. So I think these are the three needs which the customers are coming from. I don't know about long term, because once the world settles and these larger companies start having visibility of long term, they may start taking more such long term spaces with the developers as well, and it may reduce the current market share of the co-work/managed space providers. But in the short term to medium term, I do believe they're creating value. I think the co-working and managed space providers are also creating value in the tier 2 cities, where there are these short-term decisions companies are taking, and so it's working as a win-win for both the occupier and the provider.
Sure, thanks, Amit. So Sanjay, over to you. Coming to you from a different angle is on, the new trend that we see is also fractional ownership, and those platforms also picked up, and now SEBI is trying to tighten it to make it, into a mini REIT.
To regulate, yeah.
What do you see the impact of fractional ownership? Do you see any trend which supports, does it help you in the real estate sector? And secondly, your view on the REITs itself. Now we have 4 REITs, and do you see, more coming into the market, or is it going to be a, period of wait and watch? Both of you have, significantly large assets which are REITable.
Yes.
So it'll be interesting to hear your views on this.
So let me take up fractional ownership, Gaurav. First of all, there is a very large market for fragmented commercial real estate, which was never attended to properly. And I think fractional ownership is empowering those small investor, retail investor, who often put their bets on residential, and when the values don't appreciate because the yields anyway are low in resi, they flock to commercial for better yields. And later they realize that if the asset is not managed properly, beside the first lease that they do, and subsequently they struggle. So I think fractional ownership is generally very good for the industry. For that retail investor, who's struggling to cope and manage. And also it creates an opportunity, because not all the properties are REITable or can be regulated given the title issues, given the conditions in which they operate. But still there is a market for it. And many markets have a very different kind of capital to also go into such assets. So there is one for everyone. Talking about REITs, I think right now, you may probably get a private investor at a much lower cap than I'll have to do REIT. Tell you the truth, we did raise some money and we got, good value. So it really does not make sense for us to do. I do believe over 12 to months, the inflation will be corrected and arrested across the universe, unless we reinvent some issues that as human we are capable of and hurting ourselves. And therefore, the yields will come down. There'll be further compression. And who knows, at least I'm hoping that the cost of capital will come down to 5 and 6 in India. And therefore, reaching at 7 would be a doable possibility. Right now, I don't see that hope at all. So it will be wrong on my part to comment that that is what lies in immediate future. It may be medium term from my point of view. Sure. I do want to make one more comment quickly to the point earlier Amit made is, the point that Amit was talking about. I'm sorry, I've lost chain of my thought, Gaurav, but I'll come back to it later when it comes. Yeah.
Sure. So Amit, a similar question would be for you. You're dealing in commercial real estate for a long time, and you've seen the REITs evolve, and you have a large platform as well. And given that 4 REITs have come up, what's your take on the REIT story? And do you think, I'm not going to ask you whether you're going to go for the REIT immediately, but what's your view in the medium to long term future perspective on REITs?
So, if you look at the change, and good sometimes when the industry gets challenged, you kind of consolidate your strengths. So you look at the commercial real estate industry, obviously what's going in US is far more in stress, but I think fortunately in India, we are a lot better. But the fact is that what's going common and what's making it work at this stage is the flight for quality. Now, flight for quality on account of, the age of the building, the newness, area, which includes the new buildings with higher spec and upgraded tech and other factors. I would say the flight for quality in terms of amenities, the new age amenities which are coming in. The focus on the developers on ESG and safety sustainability. The focus on developers on employee well-being. And lastly, I would say the focus on creating an environment and not just like a physical workspace, but I would say an engaging workplace and delivering that experience. When you club all these 5 factors, which emerged as the new, I would say, core purpose of the physical workspace, by default, it becomes a highly specialized job, right? So it's a no-brainer that some of those fractional ownership buildings / even no disrespect to certain standalone ownership buildings, but the fact is that it becomes so specialized that some of those grade B and grade C setups will be challenged. Right. And therefore, that is what we have seen, that on one side, the occupancy level across the country on plus assets is 95% and upwards, whereas B and C could be lower. Vacancy levels could increase to up to 20% or so, right? So you're already seeing the trend. It can go in that direction more so going forward. Now, putting this together, the REIT or the large development companies would be able to deliver this better, because it will require reinvestment. It will require reinvestment in the asset level, technology level, complete reengineering in terms of the resources which are going to service the assets and the ecosystem. So, when you talk about REITs or the large institutional developers, in the mindset of institutional, what's important is the institutional mindset and the institutional thought process. In both the platforms, they will be winner in the long term because of the large scale investments, thought processes, and I would say a futuristic, approach which is required. Right, a REIT per se, we all know, is successful internationally. It is doing pretty well in India. It's only a matter of time. It should bounce back once the return to work and overall strength in the commercial real estate is there, because fundamentally the model is good and it enables the private investment into that as a retail investment, and it also enables the exit route at the right time for certain institutional players who come in with certain value and want to exit at the at a certain value creation stage, and therefore giving a for the retail investors to step in and enjoy the journey from a long-term perspective. So it is a win-win for all the stakeholders in the system. So
Sure.
that's my view on this subject.
Thanks, Amit. So just, Sanjay, you also have a residential part. I just wanted to hear your views on the residential market. I think we're having the best last couple of years, and I think it's still looking very upbeat in my view that, residential is finally having a golden run really after, 10 or more years of real distress. So what's your view going forward? Is that demand going to be driven by, affordable housing, or you think it's going to be a mix of both luxury and affordable, and generally that everybody now post the pandemic wants to own a house for sure, and bigger and larger houses or whatever houses? So what's your view on the residential market in the medium to
Gaurav,
long term?
Across tier 1 cities, affordable is a dream, and they will always be premier and mid housing. Even if they start as affordable, they will become premium and luxury because the prices will go up in next 2 to 3 years. So I think tier 1 story is very different. So I think that's the answer. I think the benefit that residential gets now is that the investors are back. The moment we cross 5 lakh units, it is a clear indication that the investors are back, because the end user were not going above 250,000 units a year. And it worries me while it encourages us to continue with momentum in residential. Why it worries me is because the speculation in residential sector eventually has to align and correct. And if that happens again, it may put a lot of developers at risk of piling up again with a high inventory. And the cost of carrying inventory now is very high. And the property taxes, the maintenance charges, the RERA responsibility. So imagine if you do a project, you complete it in 5 years. So the units that you sold, defect liability will end in 5 years' time. But if you carry the inventory for next 5 years, their defect liability will end at the 10th year. And you and I both know that the projects deteriorate, and it requires fresh investment into the asset to make it lively and vibrant for the new buyers over a period of time. And the societies want to cut cost and maintenance, and therefore they don't do as much as the developer does. So I think it opens up a lot of concerns. I hope it doesn't happen. I hope the economy continues to do well, which India is demonstrating. I think the government is spending huge on infrastructure. So it is creating new markets for developers. It is creating new investment opportunities, which have not been exploited in a way. So as long as that happens, it will really continue to support the sector. I also see tier 2, tier 3 cities thriving. And that's, I think, is a great story. And even on the job creation, because some return to manufacturing has been visible, and because the pioneers in the IT sector, which are like TCS, Wipro, HCL, Infosys, who are going to tier 2 and tier 3 cities because they already have talent from those cities in tier 1. So they know the talent of 40 to 50% comes from those cities. And now that talent is equally keen to go back to tier 2 and tier 3 cities. To those markets will also create opportunity for residential sector. So I think this combination will hold residential over a longer duration. But if for some reason, if the economy gets hit or excessive supply in fewer cities and micro markets piles up, then the journey may seem different and the prices may stagnate, in my opinion.
Sure. Thanks a lot, Sanjay, for that. That's an interesting perspective. So Amit, just one question on the technology interventions do you see that as a big thing in the real estate sector? Every other sector is disrupted, and the real estate sector is also disrupted, and we've seen many technological interventions. What is your view on the use of technology and how on automation, etc., how that's impacting you on the real estate commercial side?
So sure. I mean, see, fundamentally, we are a brick and mortar company. So sometimes the impact or the acceptance of the change can be slow. right? If you're a pure service organization, and if there is disruption due to technology, you have to adapt it, otherwise you'll vanish. So fundamentally, real estate to that extent is somewhat safe, that even if the response is slow, you can still survive. But the fact is that you got to acknowledge that technology is making a big impact, right? At every stage. If you today have to plan a project, the amount of data and the research which is required, one should use technology. Otherwise, if your competitor or someone else is using technology or appreciating the data analytics and other factors, will have an edge. Today, there are enough tools which are available at every stage of designing, the project, at the stage of developing the project. And if someone uses, let's say, a BIM during construction, another, company does not use it, would there be a difference? Answer is yes, right? Both will make the building. Answer is yes. But then the setups which will use and embrace technology will have a better chance of driving excellence. Likewise, I'm a big fan of technology in operations, and I think it is very less utilized so far. There's a big opportunity of using it at the industry level. And I give example of something like the airline industry, where 60% of the airlines is run on the operations by a single company software, MEDS, right? So the airlines have acknowledged that for base operations, one doesn't need to have every airlines does not need to have their own softwares. They have an industry level software, and which helps the airlines and the whole traffic control also collaborate each other. I think at the industry level, we have to raise the bar as to what is at the operations level, which can be, a kind of an industry level software ecosystems. It's over 100 startups trying to do the same thing. Everyone will do the learning curve, and they'll be doing more damage to each other. And then there'll be top up technology, which is a value differential, which every organization would like to have their own, and depending upon the spirit and the hunger, one wants to look at it. I do admire some of the global initiatives. I mean, JL Technologies is something which is doing fabulous job internationally. I mean, I visited their San Francisco office, so they actually have equity investments in a couple of real estate tech companies. They went even a step ahead in hiring a large office, and we're incubating the real tech companies. And I think all large real estate ecosystem who have the abilities should encourage the innovations in the real estate. I would say keep a certain funds for investing in certain experiments. Some may work, some may not. And this is how the tech industry has been working. While they have the mothership going, but there is always a fund of it. They keep it for innovations, and 1 out of 10 works, and that creates value for the industry and for the organization. So I think as the industry, we need to embrace technology. I also believe that there is substantial value creation in the operating side of it: tenant management, lease abstraction, data analysis of the operating tenant. There's a company called VTS. If you study that, they've done it a fabulous job, where you have, let's say, an entire portfolio, you put it on the portal. The portal is connected with the Bloomberg news feed, and it'll tell you in some sense that which of your tenants are have the opportunity to grow and which one have at the risk of declining. Now imagine having that portfolio analysis over a 700 to 800 tenants. You makes it far more predictable whether you're a REIT or a large institutional player. And I personally believe that the capital market guys should emphasize a lot more. Currently, I think everyone is investing in business. Their voice should be far more stronger from the boards of the organization in terms of which tech platform they're using. Is there a value creation? I mean, I'll be happy if someone says that between A and B, they're valuing the portfolio more because the entire portfolio is on a tech. So I think that voice has to come in to make that big impact. Otherwise, right now what's working is a bottom-up approach, and it's taking a lot of time. So these are my thoughts.
Thanks. So Sanjay, I just had a specific question on technology. So, we all talk about chat GPT and things like that. So do you see generative AI have an impact on real estate?
Substantial. And I think a lot of our developments, Gaurav, have been driven by supply. You see what DLF is doing, you see what Brookfield is doing, RMZ is doing, Kedia Corp is doing, and then we create products. But we have never, for some reason, analyzed demand. There is no real estate research company, Gaurav, unfortunately, even today, which analyzes demand for housing, which gives you research that this is the typology that will work in this micro market. This is what the demand supply gaps are. You need 3 BHK in this market and 2 BHK. You can actually do Soho lifestyle oriented units because of millennials in this geography and catchment. None of that exists. And I think because of competitive nature of real estate development and the amount of capital that it takes and the risk that our state today, it is inevitable that you will see artificial intelligence, chat GPT with other tools that you can leverage on, play a huge role in creating strategies for real estate. So that's really one. Talking earlier about technology, let me tell you that other than putting bricks and piling on the ground, Gaurav, everything that we use is immersed in technology in Tata Realty infrastructure. So when I buy land, we do a drone survey of contours and create maps without physically going on the ground. We do defense clearance by putting the coordinates of longitude and latitude, and we get the height clearance on the website of the defense. We do the same from airport authority. So everything is technology. Then when we sit with our design, Gaurav, I've now experienced and worked on software where I can put height limits, I can put ground coverage, land zoning, mixed zoning as parameters of constraints and do building massing on the software. And the moment I put longer floor plate, it shows on the dashboard that the constraints. So in 4 hours, Gaurav, I can walk out of the architect's office carrying a design print of my building.
Wow.
Okay,
Wow.
and I've just done that recently for my development. We were the first one in the country to do 3D printed precast house in Borivali, which is now a case study. We financially did not work at that point of time, so we didn't carry on. But the cost benefit analysis of precast technology and robotics in precast is now favoring robotics and not the labor manual conventional construction. So I think you will see the only problem in construction space, actually hardcore construction space, is the capacity of the these construction company who have not yet developed robotics to the extent that they can give you 10 to 15 million square feet in different cities. But I'm telling you right now, most of the contractors and companies are investing deeply in it. And because of high land value, the developers will be forced to use it, whether steel structures or robotics or precast. I think it's the MEP which became less, experience in terms of how to bring the services into the shell. So you can do a precast and steel structure, but there are different vendors from the MEP. If somebody can give a solution combined together, so there are synergies when you're building and merging services into the building, that will give you a perfect development solution for developers gaining experience. And I think in over 2 to 3 years, that will also be in place. The moment you do post-construction, let's say housing, we're already using artificial intelligence in lead generation, in qualified lead generations and automated calls. Call centers are calling customers. The moment you put 3 BHK on the Google, a call will land on your phone, automated. So all of that technology is really out there. And when you go into property or asset management, it's already technology based. In fact, most of the companies, certainly Tata Realty and Infrastructure, we are using Microsoft Azure platform for entire enterprise management. All our compliances, statutory, company secretarial, finance, HR, everything is on cloud-based services. So which triggers the past, present, and future compliances on a single dashboard. We have stopped doing presentation reviews in the company. We log into our cloud. Everybody, depending on their levels, have access to the data point, and we review performance online and on a hand phone, actually. So we are totally immersed. So I think contrary to what others believe that we still a brick and mortar company, we actually are now totally immersed in technology. Even the kind of cement that we're using has synthetics and technology components built in it. The mesh that we use on ACC blocks, there is a science behind it. We are using certain kind of paints which give protection and from leakages, for example. It has a strong technology base. We're using glass facades on building high performance and reflective and saves energy. And you can monitor those energies through your technology tools and sensors, and therefore contribute in sustainable building and management, for example. So all of these are really helping us. And I think going forward, it will only become more obvious and glaring for others to follow.
Yeah, so I think my last question, Amit, for you and Sanjay, and Amit, you can start. Given the audience that we have is, really the future of our real estate sector. What do you think are the two things that they should focus on to be successful in this sector?
Yeah, I think the fortunately for us, me and Sanjay and everyone, we chose real estate as a career of choice, right? And therefore, for anyone to be successful, the core is that do your research on the career first, identify the dimensions, identify the dynamics, and early in life, really introspect yourself. That is it the career you want to carry on for the entire life? And the core to me is that to be self-introspected first. That is that something which you're meant for, or is it something what you love? Once you got that sorted, then you have the natural passion and interest and the ability and openness to learn. So that I think is a core. The second part is that how as a professional, you always have a mindset, or what I call it as a mindset of self-renewal. In a world which is very dynamic, where everything which was the last year would not be relevant the next year. So how are you open for learning? How are you open for feedback? How are you open when you connect with mentors in ability to listen and reach out? That whole attitude is a very parameter for a big success. The third element, which I would also say, is sometimes people have the first two, but in that aspiration of possibly higher salary, etc., locations, etc., job change is too fast. So I think I've seen in this industry that the credibility of the people also matters. During the highs and lows, are you working for your partners or the organizations, who have kind of trusted you, and therefore, while there is a easy way out, everyone likes to talk outside the organization, do that much of effort on talking internally in the organization on the aspiration, whether it's for the growth or learning, etc. And therefore, try working with your partner first. And the best success would be that if you can grow in the same organization and kind of move up the ladder through various self-renewal processes and feedback mechanism, and at the same time focus towards enhancing your skills, enhancing your learning. Today, fortunately, at every level, the ability to enhance learning and skills is there. I mean, in our careers, when we started, we would look at, some people who had done masters in real estate from Cornell, MIT and others. Today, fortunately, those courses are available online. So at any stage, one can refresh and figure out what is that content which possibly one has missed early and one needs to do renewal. And then today, every learning organization is present in India. And you have Coordinate here, now ULI is entering here, RICS is here. So there is enough learning platforms which are also available. So those would be my recommendation to the young collaboration.
Sure. Thanks, Amit. And Sanjay, just concluding thoughts from your side on the two things which you think is good for someone to be successful in real estate.
Over 90% of real estate developers are family-owned, Gaurav, and they'll have to become professional. I know the second generation is taking control over from them, in some cases, third generation. I think they'll have to let go of the control. The old man and the old lady still controls the business. And I know their children are trying at the age of 40 to take control over the businesses. So that is one. They have to professionalize their management. And I think that the second and third generations are professionals themselves as promoters. So that's really is going to help. A related point, Gaurav, is, India is a federation of states, and everything has changed, but the attitude of the state government. They're still using real estate as a tool to serve their vested interest. And I think the government must do something about unified development control across the country. And it will help institutionalize development. Because right now, the reason why we say that development is a local business, because I don't think you can master the every state. You can do 2 states, you can do 3 states, but there's still limit because volatility of the markets will make you suffer in some, given the nature or magnitude of the problem in this sector. So I think that's a related point that's very, very important. The government should change. The third one, we've discussed it already, technology. I think it will really make a difference. If the sooner we embrace it, the better. And future-proof. The related point to that is that you should make a very lean organization. And what that does, it gives you the ability to adapt to market volatility, which is the point that Amit was making earlier. That how do you, switch? You can only switch if you're agile, if you're lean. And therefore, have a very open mind and not perception and maybe a nature of the industry. The developers have to let go of this herd mentality. Use technology to create their own niche, whether it's student housing, senior living, luxury, premier, mid-housing, affordable, and excel and scale that business. So these fundamentally are related subjects which can make a difference.
Sure. So thank you, Amit. Thank you, Sanjay. With this, I would like to conclude this session and hand it over to Sapna. Thanks a lot for your insights. I think it's been great, and I'm sure the audience would have appreciated your thoughts. So thank you, Amit. Thank you, Sanjay.
Thank you, Gaurav.
It was fantastic session we had. Thanks, Gaurav, Karnik, Mr. Sanjay Dutt, Amit Grover. I think this sets the tone for our next sessions that we will be having with the younger leaders of the sector. But in one sentence, if I have to just ask you, we are talking about the new generation. Mr. Dutt, you said the last generations will have to let go now. And Amit, you spoke about the workforce, the percentage of workforce that India has a contribution. So we all agree that India has an immense young human capital, but how do we, utilize them? How do we raise their productivity, so that we can be one of the biggest global human resource provider? In one sentence, if you have to say, what is that we need to do? Mr. Amit Grover, starting with you.
Yeah, so I believe that the world which is going forward is moving from the era of from competitive edge to collaborative edge. And I think the biggest value creation of a younger generation can be how to reduce silos in the organizations, how to cut across and drive collaboration in the organizations. And I think in real estate organizations, because the people come from respective domains, right? I mean, architecture, finance, legal, etc., etc. How do you build organizations which are highly collaborative? And how do you embrace technology to enable that collaboration? And that can drive some of the product innovations and the operations innovations. So I would focus on that.
Right, not to be in silos, talk to each other. And I think, that is what going to raise the productivity of everyone. Mr. Dutt, what do you have to add?
It's a very difficult one, Sapna, because I know the reality on the ground. While the industry is transitioning from one generation to another, the circumstances are not letting the second generation take control. You see, their parents had this gift of managing approvals in the government organizations. And the second generation doesn't like going to municipal offices and town and country development offices and managing approvals. Okay. So they are obviously going to outsource, and that's not going to work. So I think that we are in the influx, transition stage. So you have to give, they'll have to adapt some traits of their founders and incorporate that in their management style and therefore lead it. So it's a hybrid for the second generation. That
right. I think working at the grassroots, they'll have to learn to that, being in the field and then working there. Mr. Karnik, your last words. What do you say? How can we raise the human capital of Indian real estate?
I think we have to modernize our processes, and I think Sanjay's point is very clear. The new generation coming in, we have to be more professional, and we can't remain to be the run by family, etc. I think that's very important. Bringing in professional management will really help develop this more.
Okay, becoming more professionalized, sticking to our grassroots way of operations, not outsourcing it, and not working in silos. What Amit said. Some very fair viewpoints from our speakers. Thank you so much for being here with us today, Mr. Dutt, Mr. Grover, Mr. Karnik, and for this wonderful session. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.